man, it's time to break free. Eyes wide open, gotta see what I see. Standing on the front lines, fighting for the truth. Lift the veil of lies, it's time to be the proof. Take a stand, don't you back down. The system's rigged, man, it's time to break free. Eyes wide open, gotta see what I see. Standing on the front lines, fighting for the truth. Lift the veil of lies, it's time to be the proof. Take a stand, don't you back down. Raise your voice, let's shake the town. We're the voices that won't be ignored. Breaking chains, yeah, we're ready for war. With the power. The system's rigged, man, it's time to break free. Eyes wide open, gotta see what I see. Standing on the front lines, fighting for the truth. Lift the veil of lies, it's time to be the proof. Take a stand, don't you back down. Raise your voice, let's shake the town. We're the voices that won't be ignored. Breaking chains, yeah, we're ready for war. With the power.
board is...
I'm sorry, I still had you muted. My apologies.
The board is, I just need to confirm there is some other conversation. Is everything? Okay, yes ma'am, we are ready. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Ms. Hunter, if you can advise when the recording has begun.
The recording has begun.
Thank you. The time now is 11:41 a.m. We're resuming our hearings. Our next case will be case number 34. Case number 34, Susan Smith. One moment as Leith connects, and she does have supporters, and will be represented by attorney Tommy Thomas.
Thank you.
One moment as all parties connect.
Ms. Brown-Hennerhan, I do have a statement that I need to read into the record, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I have received this correspondence. It is addressed to the Honorable Chair Kimberly Frederick, dated November 20th, 2024. Please be advised that I will recuse myself in the parole hearing of Susan Smith, number 221487. I was acting warden at Camille Brand Correctional Center in 1999, where inmate Smith was housed, and subsequently transferred to Leith Correctional Institution. I have determined that it is appropriate to recuse to eliminate any appearance of affecting her opportunity for parole. Respectfully, Geraldine P. Miro. Thank you, Mrs. Miro. This is accepted. If you would please exit the room. Thank you. Mrs. Miro has recused herself of this case and has exited the room. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have moved her site into the lobby briefly. And one moment as we admit all parties. There at Leith. Ma'am, confirming you are Miss Susan Smith.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. And attorney Tommy Thomas, are you able to hear us?
Yes, ma'am, I am.
Thank you. And there at the support site, confirm you are here in support of Miss Susan Smith.
They're asking, can you hear? Yes, we can hear.
And you're here in support of Miss Smith?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you all for joining you before the board. Please wait for the chairman to address you.
Good morning, Ms. Smith. Good morning, Mr. Thomas. And good morning to the folks at Watkins. Thank you all for being here with us today. We hope everyone is doing well. Ms. Smith, I want you to know that we have received the packet of information that Mr. Thomas's office provided to us on your behalf, and we have reviewed that packet. So thank you for submitting that in advance of this hearing today. Mr. Thomas, are you going to begin, or is your client going to begin?
Yes, ma'am, I'll be glad to begin.
Yes, sir.
Members of the board, good morning. This is Susan Smith's parole hearing. This has probably been one of the most difficult cases that I have had to put together for a parole presentation. Just lots of different factors to consider. She's been convicted of murder, of course. She has served 30 years, and she was 23 at the time that this incident occurred. She was sentenced to life with the eligibility of parole, so that's why she is here today. I'm not really going to speak much about the crime. There are some things that I want to cover, and that's not out of disrespect. We were very concerned about that. Today is Susan's parole hearing, and so today is going to be about Susan, and I want to make sure that the things that are important not only to her but to this hearing and this board are presented, and I want to thank you in advance for your time to listen to everything. This story is really a mental health story. Some of this stuff, I've known Susan for a couple of years, and we've been working on this case. One of the things when I first met her was, of course, trying to kind of figure out some rhyme or reason as to, how these things have happened, and was able to find and have someone come to see her on a routine basis for counseling, and also to try to help her, through the daily things with Department of Corrections. As a result, that's kind of what I came to the conclusion was it is a mental health story. It's about the dangers of untreated mental health. It is about the lack of insight, the lack of diagnosis into mental health, and it's about stigmas, old stigmas. Of course, I'm 68 years old. I remember those. Hopefully, they're not as bad today. Susan was hospitalized as a young teen for a short period of time for mental health treatment. And not to disparage anybody, but her mom was telling folks that she was in the hospital because she had a strep infection. So those were things that we didn't talk about. Those were things that were pushed under the rug, so to speak, because they were embarrassing. They showed weakness. I don't know what they showed, but they showed up and culminated in Susan as a result of a day that all of this came together and produced some horrendous results. So I think it's important to Susan, if anything comes out of this hearing, it's that people understand there's nothing to be ashamed of. There's nothing and no reason not to reach out and seek treatment. And there is certainly no stigma that should be involved in trying to better yourself, help yourself, for yourself and for others, members of the family and everyone. Susan, moving on, Susan is a high school graduate. She has some college with USC Union. She has attended International Christian College, and she's worked on an associate's degree. She's still actually working on that in Christian counseling. She has no prior record that I'm aware of. If parole, she will be living with her brother, Scotty Vaughn. Scotty is here today and very briefly wanted to address the board. The job for her, she has served 30 years, so she's been in Department of Corrections for a long time, would be through vocational rehab. The PEP program is probation and parole, would know it. And we have made arrangements for aftercare with a licensed mental health professional. You have that information in the packet that's been provided to you. Some of the programs, I took the time to look at everything, to look at the programs that she's been involved in, and I'm not going to speak about all of those because you have those in the packet. The ones that I think are important and relevant today is the self-harmers group. She has attempted to commit suicide on several different occasions within the Department of Corrections. 7 Habits, Beyond Abuse, Jumpstart, which she is a great fan of. She does not have a drug or alcohol addiction, thank goodness. She has been active on Novo and the Cipher Works programs, Loss and Grief, healing seminars, women's empowerment, anger management, self-esteem, and domestic violence workshops. I normally, and I've presented a number of parole hearings, I first started with this thinking that it had to be different than normally what I would do as far as a presentation. And I came to the conclusion maybe this week, and it doesn't. I think it is, and I will stick with what I would normally do as far as the structure of my presentation. What I always begin with the board is contributing factors because I believe that's important. We need to know what was going on, why it was going on for the board to be able to make a informed decision about her parole expectations and her parole eligibility and what kind of candidate she is for parole. One of the things that has jumped out at me, and I saw this last night in the media, And I know that Susan wants to speak, and because she feels like it's important to get the truth out there, this is not about the love for another man. I saw it on local TV about how this was all about another man and him not wanting children. From what I have been able to determine, that is just not true. I have spoken with David Bruck, who was a defense attorney on a number of different occasions. David has been a great source of information in regards to Susan. He indicated to me that this was a theory of a motive by the state. That's where we think it developed. However, this was never proven at trial, and it was actually abandoned by the state. So, but it has stuck. And I just wanted to, I know it's important to her to bring this to your attention. The contributing factors in this case were multiple stress points. They converged all at the same time. And we're certainly not trying to say anything about, the horrificness of this crime. It is, and she was found guilty. But we're trying to kind of maybe present to the parole board how these things developed and how it's possible that something like this could happen. One of the things that has been important in her life, and I think is a huge contributor to this crime, is the suicide of her dad at age 6. Horrific, just horrific. And she blamed herself. How could he leave me? And I think it sets the stage for the beginning of some serious mental health issues, some serious depression, which just kind of culminates and continues to snowball. And the lack of, recognition and treatment for this issue with her dad. I mean, it was like the old stigma of, we just tough through these terrible situations, and, that's how it's done. It's not done that way. There were some attempts to get some sort of psychological help for her after a couple of suicide attempts, and never went anywhere. She was the child. The adults in the picture did not, can't blame them, I think it was the times, did not seek and try to understand the depth and the significance of this and what it was going to produce at a later date. Severe depression, potentially depression after the birth of her last child, which was also undiagnosed, and that postpartum depression that existed in a severe situation. Just in culmination, and I apologize for reading something to the board, but I've looked at so much material, and if I can beg the board's attention for a few minutes, I would like to say this and read this because I think it summarizes everything that I've been talking about and everything that Susan wanted to talk about what happened. She said to me, and this was not in preparation for parole, I found this buried in a bunch of documents that had been provided to me, and it is from Susan. And she says, I believe this is what happened to me on October 25th, 1994. I lost touch with reality. My thoughts were not rational nor logic. I don't think I understood that if I allowed this car to go into the lake, that I would never see my children again. The finality of it was not real to me because my thoughts were so screwed up at the time. My mind, I thought, was doing what was best for them. I knew Jesus would take better care of them than I could. It was truly a moment of insanity. There are no easy explanations and not much understanding. How can you make sense of something that is senseless? And I think that shows the remorse that she's had. She's lived with this for forever since this thing. When I first met her and I would go and see her, remorse is difficult. You know, that's something with the parole hearings that I've presented for years, is to how do you say, how do you demonstrate remorse? People do it in different manners. And I always look for that. I always ask my clients, you know, and look for the remorse. I could see the pain on her face. It was so difficult. Talking about things were extremely difficult. And not because she didn't want to talk about them, it's just because it was so hard to talk about them. So I think that she is truly remorseful for what happened. And I think she would do anything in the world to bring these children back. But moving on to the next consideration in this presentation is really changes. What changes has she made in herself in prison? One of the things I think is important is that she has no prior history. Nothing that would lead up to believe that someone would be capable of a crime of this nature, which I think is also indicative of what their risk is if the board was inclined to allow her to participate on parole. I don't think that was as a risk, and I think that's what our counselor, who had seen her on a regular basis for a number of years, also indicated that it was very low risk. She's been IRC chairman within the institution. That means something. You're voted on by your peers, and it is an honor to be in that position. She has been a math tutor in education. She's helped numerous inmates obtain their GED. She's been in the character arts program, prison fellowship, which I think is extremely important to her. She's much stronger in her faith than she has ever been. And that is a comfort for her. It's something that that she enjoys. It's something that is extremely important. Jumpstart, good program. She's been in that program. She would actually like to go to Jumpstart if the board would consider her for parole. He has been out of the program for a couple of years, and that would be, she'd have to do some other things for that to happen. So that's why we have chosen that she would go and live with her brother. Good, solid individual in the community, willing to help her in any manner. And one thing I've noticed from the family and friends is that we mourn with her the pain of this crime, but we still love her and we're there for her. So she has that for her, and which is a great resource if the board was going to consider her for parole. One of the other things I've noticed is giving back to the community, arts and crafts. She's made arts and crafts that she's donated to charity. She's helped St. Jude's. She's helped staff members. She said that an insight into what's going on with her, stand on her own 2 feet, not to be influenced by others, live a better life, think before acting. And, you know, other people are affected by your decisions and your actions, and the importance of mental health. I think that comes back into what we're talking about. It's not an excuse, but it is certainly some indication or maybe explanation as to what was going on. The goals, and this is my final area for my presentation, is that I don't think she'll ever be able to forgive herself. That is something that she struggles with forever. I don't think that creates a danger to anyone, except potentially maybe a danger to her. Her medications, her mental health medications, have been balanced well by the Department of Corrections. I think she thinks as clear now as she ever has. I think that she is able to establish goals and what she would like to do in her life. And I think on the top of that list is to give back and to try to help others. She said that no one should suffer in the way that in their treatment. There is help available, and she wants to help to get out and maybe help to promote that that concept that there's help out there. You just have to seek it. And she said she'd like to live a quiet life. She would welcome supervision if granted parole, and maybe that is the best thing about this situation. From that type of situation is that if she's granted parole, it is for life, and she will be supervised and she will be monitored by the Department of Probation and Parole Services for the rest of her life. She said that she would welcome that because that is another pillar of stability that is available for her that she can reach out to. And she said that that would be a vital and instrumental part of her life. She loves animals. She said that would like to find a job helping with dogs and cats. I often ask my clients, if you could choose and you could make these wishes come true, what would you like to do? You know, what is the job that you truly would enjoy? Often that's different than the job that we have. And I think that job for Susan is the care for animals and being involved in that area of help. In closing, I think that she has indicated to me that her desire is to make her life mean something, something other than the things that she has done, to make a positive impact in her life. I talked to somebody, I've spoken to a number of people, and I've spoken to one person that told me, they were at the trial, and they said that their impression of Susan was that she was living to die. I didn't really understand that. I think the more that I have been talking to her and preparing this case, that maybe I do. I think that has been Susan's life, is living to die for the things that she has done. And I think that what she's asking today is to ask the board to consider a parole for her, so maybe she can make something positive out of a horrific situation. I want to thank you for your time. I know I've taken a lot of time today. I would just ask if you would please consider her for release.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas, and we appreciate all
Yes,
your
ma'am.
comments.
Thank you.
And again, thank you for the very detailed packet that you presented. Ms. Smith,
Yes, ma'am.
what would you like to tell us today?
First of all, I want to say how very sorry I am.
It's okay, Susan. Just talk with us.
I know that what I did was horrible. And And I would give anything if I could go back and change it. And I love Michael and Alice with all my heart.
Ms. Smith, were you under the influence of drugs or alcohol the night that you murdered your children?
No, ma'am, I was not.
Your attorney talked about working with mental health. Is that helpful to you?
Ma'am,
Mr. Thomas,
I hear you.
Mr. Thomas talked about the fact that you were working with mental health, and my question is that helpful to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that something that you would be willing to continue with on the outside if you were granted parole?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Smith, your crime took a lot of resources from the law enforcement community. What, if anything, would you say to the folks who worked so hard to find your children if you had the opportunity to speak to them today?
That I'm sorry that I put them through that. I really, really am. And I'm especially sorry to the drivers that I had to find them. I wish I could take that back. I really do. I didn't lie to get away with it. I really didn't. I was just scared. I didn't know how I could tell the people that loved them that they would never see them again. I didn't know how I could tell David he couldn't see his sons again. And I'm sorry. I don't know. I know that's not enough. I know it's not, but I don't know. I know those just sound like words, but they come from my heart. They really do.
Right. One of the things that we review is your institutional record, and you've had some infractions throughout the years, some involving the use of some narcotics. Do you have any issues with drugs or alcohol at this point?
I don't. No, ma'am, I don't.
And you had a recent disciplinary infraction just a few months ago. So why should this board think that if we grant you parole that you're going to go out and follow the rules and the laws of society if you do not follow the rules within the institution?
Well, this last infraction, I was trusted the wrong person. This lady contacted me, and I trusted her. I thought she was going to do a documentary on mental health, and I really am not guilty of what they charged me with, and I have filed an appeal on that charge. And as far as your question, I've never been in trouble before, and the things that I have been found guilty of in here have been just stupidity. I know I made a lot of mistakes in here, and I have learned from them. And before this last infraction, it had been 10 years. Because I grew up and I knew that I needed to stop making dumb decisions. And I did. I knew it was time to grow up and do the right thing. I just made a lot of dumb choices and mistakes in here. So I know I've learned from those mistakes.
What do you feel is the most important thing that you've learned while you've been incarcerated?
Ma'am?
What do you think is the most important thing that you have learned while you have been incarcerated?
That people are important, that forgiveness and love, that family is important, and that decisions we make not just affect us, they affect the people that we love. And not to take things or people for granted.
All right, is there anything else that you would like to tell us today that wasn't in your packet or that has not already been said?
I would just like to say that I am a Christian and God is a big part of my life, and I know He has forgiven me, and it is by His grace and mercy that, and I have a lot of faith and I live by that every day, and I just ask that you show that same kind of mercy as well. And I guess, yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Are there any other questions
Okay,
from
thank
the
you.
board? Folks at Watkins, I need each of you to please state your name for the record and your relationship to Ms. Smith. Ma'am, can we begin with you, please?
Ma'am, state your name and your relationship.
What?
Ma'am, state your name and the relationship.
I did not, is it I?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm Ann Curry, and I'm a long-term friend and supporter of Susan.
Thank you, Ms. Curry. And sir, your name, please?
And the,
State your name, sir, and your relationship. State your name and your relationship.
okay, I'm the Reverend Tom Curry. I've known Susan briefly when she was a teenager, when I was called in for one session each, counseling about two different matters, once by her teacher and once by Susan. And I testified at her trial, which in the sentencing phase, and I have kept up with her by writing her
Thank you.
weekly for the last 30 years. I did this because I felt that she needed somebody to remind her that her whole life was not caught up in that one experience, but that she could put her life back together, because her life was in such turmoil when all this happened. And I think she's a different person now. And that's what I want to talk about when I get a chance to say a word about it. I have new hearing aids, and I can't always hear your questions, but my mind's fine, and I'm just a retired Presbyterian minister alone.
Well, thank you, Mr. Curry. We appreciate that, and you're welcome. You're welcome to make your statement that you would like to make right now.
All right. Okay, I want to start with her trial.
Mr. Curry, let me interrupt you before you get too far into that. We are not here to retry her case in any form or fashion. That is not the purpose of the parole board. We are here to determine if she is a good candidate for parole, and if so, we would set the parameters of that parole. But in no way can we discuss the trial or retry her case. She was convicted of 2 counts of murder. If you'd like to speak to anything outside of that, you're welcome to.
Okay, Nina. I just want to say 2 things about the trial. I only went to the trial for one part of one morning to testify in the sentencing phase against the death penalty. And the 2 things that I picked up from the trial itself was one, a prison guard who came, a female, who said that she had not seen a criminal as remorseful as Susan was, and that she felt her remorse for what she had done was genuine. And the second thing was one of the jurors. The prosecuting attorney was pushing hard for the death penalty, and the jury voted not, and they voted life, as y'all have already mentioned. But one of the jurors said that she felt like that it would be harder for Susan to live with what she had done than to die. I thought that was a true statement. And it certainly has been for Susan during her 30 years in prison, and especially the first part of her time that she was there. It's been mentioned she attempted suicide several times, and she had a couple of run-ins where guards were able to use her for their pleasure, and that's a bad situation, and was dealt with, and she was not the only prisoner involved.
All right, thank you, Mr. Curry. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for your comments. Mrs. Curry, do you wish to say anything?
Yes, please, and thank you for letting us speak. I just want to say that I really think Susan is ready for parole now. She has surrounded herself with a caring support community that advises and encourages her, and she listens to them. As Mr. Thomas said, she has done everything she can to prepare herself to live outside of prison and taking courses and learning how to teach and caring about other people and working on teams and projects together. And thirdly, as both of them have said, she is not the young woman who went into prison 30 years ago. She is much stronger. She has grieved, is still grieving, will always grieve. But she's learned from it. And she has experienced paralyzing remorse and survived. Today, she wants to begin to rebuild her life, and I hope you'll give her that chance.
I want to say one more word. For the last 2 years, now remember I wrote her for 30 years, once a week, pretty close to every week. And that is, the last 2 years I've ended my letters by saying, Susan, you live in a needy place. Share God's love with those around you and with your other contacts, but always live in hope for your own future. There is a time when you will live on your own again past prison, and that's what I hope y'all will give her the chance to do at this time. She is a very different person from what she was 30 years ago. And I've probably been in contact with her, talking about spiritual things, but also just trying to enlarge her life by telling her about what's going on in the world around her and in the Curry family. She's the same age as one of my children.
All right, thank you, Mr. Curry. We appreciate all of your comments, sir. We appreciate all of your comments and all of the information. Mr. Thomas, anything in closing, sir?
No, ma'am. Nothing further than I really would ask the board to take the time to consider Susan's request for parole. I do believe that if we look at insight into things that we've done, and as far as things that we need to do to get out of the Department of Corrections and to try to make our life worthwhile or mean something, I think Susan is at that point. And I just again want to thank you for listening today, and hope you would consider our presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Thank you, Ms. Smith, and thank you,
Yes,
Mr. and
ma'am.
Mrs. Curry. We certainly appreciate all of you joining us today. If you all will please exit the rooms, we will have an answer for you later today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
One moment as the room clears. And the room is clear, and we do have additional testimony facilitated by the Office of Victim Services.
Please wait as all victims join from Central Office.
Good afternoon. come on in. Thank you. Can you move just a little further around so we can get everyone in? Thank you so much. Thank you. Good afternoon. You all are here for the parole consideration case of Susan Smith. Is that correct?
Yes.
We are so very, very sorry for the circumstances that brought you all to be a part of this hearing today. But we cannot tell you how much we appreciate you joining us and being here with us today. Thank you so much. Before we begin, I do need each of you to please state your name for the record and your interest in this case. Sir, can we begin with you, please?
Stand up.
You don't have to stand up. You do whatever's comfortable for you.
I'm David Smith. I'm the father of Michael and Alex.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
And Tiffany Smith. I am David Smith's wife.
Rebecca Smith French. I'm the aunt of Michael and Alex.
I'm Savannah Smith, and I am David's daughter, Michael and Alex's sister.
Austin Hughes. I'm a friend of the victim family.
I'm Tommy Pope. I was the solicitor in the original trial.
I'm Kevin Brackett. I'm the 16th Circuit solicitor currently and was a prosecutor on the original case.
Laura Hudson with the Crime Victims Counsel.
Mark Reynolds. I'm with the victim's family.
Billy Bailey, personal friend.
Kathy Bailey, personal friend.
Jeff Bailey, Sheriff, Union County.
Scott Cooper, Sheriff's Office, Union County.
Michael Cogdill, documentarian.
Rita Swan, aunt to Michael and Alex.
Doug Smith, Dave's uncle.
Thank you all, and again, we are so very, very sorry for the circumstances, but thank you for being here with us today. We do have the facts of the offense, and we've heard from Ms. Smith. Now we want to hear from you all, whether you were for or against parole, and if anyone would like to make a statement, you are certainly welcome to do so. Mr. Smith, would you like to begin, or would you like to conclude at the end? It's completely up to you.
Conclude at the end, please.
Okay. Who would like to speak first?
I'll speak first, please, ma'am.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
So I'm Tommy Pope. I was the 16th Circuit solicitor, and this was a death penalty case. And the reason it was a death penalty case, you know, the solicitor has that discretion, but the reason it was a death penalty case, you know the facts and circumstances, and I just felt strongly that had the black man with the toboggan committed the crime, people would expect a death penalty. If David Smith had committed the crime, people would have expected the death penalty. And I thought it was very important that the portrayal that Susan Smith showed, that she be treated the same. We knew it was going to be difficult. We knew there was a likelihood of not achieving the death penalty. But I think it's important to note the jury at the time actually asked, what did life mean? And you may be aware, but in that time, life did not mean life. Life became life in 96. We tried the case in 95. So the jury was asked, and the judge was required to instruct the jury that you take life and death in its plain and usual meaning. Carrying that forward, the jury showed her mercy. The jury gave her a life sentence. But one of the jurors, or more of the jurors, after the fact, and speaking to the media, said that they believed the life sentence was the greater punishment because they believed that Susan should have to reflect on what she did to Michael and Alex, that she should have to spend the rest of her life thinking about what she'd done. The two fallacies in that logic that the jury could not have known are, number one, obviously we're here today, so life did not mean life. Number two, and you have it before you, Susan's conduct from the day she rolled the kids in the lake. The defense claimed a botched suicide, but she was able to save herself. She was able to blame a black guy. She wasn't wet. She wasn't injured when she runs to the house and concocts this story. Susan has always focused on Susan. I will believe to the end of my time that Susan made a horrible, horrible choice to choose a man over her family. I said the boys were in the car, her wedding gown was in the car, her wedding album was in the car. She thought in a nice package she could roll that away. If she could have put David in the car, he would have been there too. In a nice package, she could roll that away and start this new life with this other man. And she led everyone on, including David, for 9 horrible days. And so as you look at her conduct in prison, whether it was a relationship with guards, the social media, the attention, the conduct recently with the publisher, Susan, she's got people outside, I'm sure you've heard from them, that want to take care of her. Susan has always focused on what's best for Susan. And so the evidence that you have before you, I think, tells clearly that she has not focused on Michael and Alex. She only has and continues to focus on herself. And so on behalf of this family, on behalf of justice and the justice with this case, it's not about her behavior or what she would do when getting out, but I know one of your criteria is the nature of the crime and whether the punishment is there. And I would submit for the crime she committed, the actions she committed, that punishment has not been achieved yet. And so I would ask you to deny parole. Now, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Solicitor Payne. Appreciate it. Would anyone else like to speak?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Madam Chairman, Chair Lady, and members of the board, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak here today. I was on the prosecution team that handled the prosecution along with Solicitor Pope and Speaker Pope now, who you just heard from. I wanted to bring to you a couple of vignettes from the case to help bring this alive for you. In the course of preparing for today, I've gone back over the case. I've reviewed the file. I've pulled some of the evidence out, which is in a closet just off my office. Evidence like the note that was written to Susan Smith by her boyfriend, the man she was cheating on her husband with, who told her in the note that he could not be with her anymore because he didn't want children, and that they had no long-term future because he didn't want children. And then 1 week later, she's rolling her car down the ramp at John D. Long Lake with her 2 children strapped into the back. She betrayed her husband when she cheated on him, and she betrayed her children against the laws of nature when she should have been sworn to protect those children. She betrayed them when she left them in the seat and rolled that car down, and she was not trying to commit suicide. She was trying to change her life. She wanted to kill her old life and start anew. She was wearing a sweatshirt that the man who she was cheating with had given to her when she was on TV 2 hours later after claiming that a black man in a toboggan had carjacked her and spirited her 2 children away. How many black men in red Mazdas got pulled over across the country because they were looking for those 2 kids and they were looking for this fictitious man that didn't exist, purely a figment of her imagination? I was on the banks of John D. Long Lake, standing there with about 40 or 45 people, 50 people, as the tow truck from Greer's Wrecker launched its line into the water where divers hooked it up to the car and pulled it out. Total silence as that car emerged from the dark water. Everybody sitting there hoping and praying that maybe it was a different car. Maybe it was a wrong car. Maybe the kids weren't in there. Not a word was said. It was one of the most haunting memories of my life, and it will live with me forever. And that's the last point I want to make. You're going to hear from this man, and he's going to tell you what this did to him. I can't begin to describe it. I sat in court and listened to him testify, and it was heart-wrenching as he described that his hopes and dreams for the future were destroyed that night when she killed their 2 children. This didn't just traumatize him. It traumatized Union. It traumatized South Carolina. The entire country was in the grips of her lie and her treachery. The entire country. This was a global sensation. People were fixated on this. They're not the only victims. And on behalf of the community that I represent now, I don't believe she should ever be released from jail until the last person alive who remembers Michael and Alex is dead. And that will not be in her lifetime. She should never be released, and she should not really be released now. His hopes and dreams were dashed. I hope you dash hers today and every 2 years hereafter.
else wish to speak? You're welcome to stay seated if you're more comfortable, whatever's best for you.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to read what I wrote. Okay, it's easier, if you don't mind. When Susan murdered Michael and Alex, she altered the course of my life and my family's life forever. Having grown up with 3 older brothers, Susan was like the sister I never had. I was a teenage mom of just 16, so I looked up to her and even admired her. I thought she was the best mother to the boys, and I strived to be just like her. I would even leave my own daughter with her while I attended night school. Susan betrayed us and took the lives of those boys and then lied about it. For days, when she did this, she destroyed a trust in me that I've never regained. And as a result, I do not develop close relationships with others easily, in particular females. Anxiety and depression have plagued my life for years. I push it away during spring and summer as best possible, but it always creeps back up around Alex's birthday when it rolls around in August, because I know Michael's won't be far behind in October, and then the anniversary of their death on the 25th. Because in my mind, I always refer to this period of time as the sad months. Throughout my career, the majority of any time missed at work is around Michael and Alex's birthdays and the anniversary of their death. I stay in bed and sleep to deal with the depression. It's just easier this way, or at least it seems to be. Something as simple as taking up a new hobby turned into a nightmare for me last year. My boyfriend and I decided to take scuba diving lessons. I geared up with all the equipment, face mask on, oxygen tank on my back, stepped off the side of the pool into 15 feet of water and immediately sank to the bottom from all the weight I was carrying. Normally you'd remember to breathe and begin to ascend as I had studied for all the weeks leading up to that point, but nothing prepared me for dropping into a body of water and the feeling of being weighted down, unable to breathe, and seeing Michael and Alex's face. I immediately panicked, ripping off my face mask, sucking in water, and not being able to come to the surface from all the weight I was carrying. I was drowning, and I knew in that moment that was the closest I'd ever come to knowing what my nephews had endured and how horrific and scared their last moments had to have been. Something as simple as taking up a new hobby was yet one more thing Susan was taken from me. In over 25 years, I have found myself finding comfort going to the cemetery where the boys are buried, beside our older brother. I go there often and I will tidy up their graves, where people have left trinkets or gifts, and I talk to them. I go there when I'm happy. I go there when I'm upset. Rainy days, sunny days, cold days and hot days, it doesn't matter. It brings me peace just being there. But as a result, I'm not able to bring myself to move away from Union County, because now I don't want to leave them. We have missed Michael and Alex's kindergarten graduations, numerous birthdays, birthday parties, summer vacations, Easters, along with annual Easter egg hunts at Meemaw's, Thanksgivings, Christmases, football, soccer, baseball games, proms, high school graduations, possible marriages, and births of their own children. We don't know, because they never had a chance. They never had a chance to live a life of their own. Susan took that from them. She took that from us all. And now she wants a chance to be free after only serving 30 years. No. Life should mean life. So I'm respectfully asking you to please deny her request for parole. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
I apologize if I get a little bit emotional. I drove down from Detroit on Monday night, which was Halloween before of that week, and
a young man, middle-aged man then. I'm an old man now. But the boys never got to. As Becky said, they missed a lot. They missed their life. Today they would be in their 30s. David would probably be a granddad. The boys were still here. I took my sister out to the lake yesterday, and it's a beautiful drive out there. I was just thinking, all that time she had time to change her mind, to stop and turn around and not go through with it, but she did. And then the boys were gone. A year later, I came back down for the trial. Tommy Pope did a good job. They proved that she was guilty. During the sentencing trial, they came back and recommended life. Tommy had argued for the death penalty. The family was for death penalty. They come back and recommended life. But we said, well, we'll live with it. You know, she'll have to live with it every day for the rest of her life. So we were satisfied with life, but we do not want a parole. We were against any parole for her. And then two other items going back 30 years. The Friday morning after apologize. But the Friday morning after, David, his dad, my brother's wife, and I, the four of us, were sitting at Holcomb Funeral Home in Union and discussing the funeral arrangements. David asked to see the boys, and Mr. Holcomb had a funny look on his face, and he said, "Mr. Smith, could I see you?" So we went out, and he said, "You know, your nephew can't see the boys." And he told me why. He said, "You know, the boys were in the water for 9 days." So I went back and told David, I said, "You know, it's better that you don't see the boys." And I think deep down he understood why. The next day, Saturday, three of us, David, his dad, and I, went out to the Bougainville United Methodist Church Cemetery and to look where the boys are going to be buried. And David's brother, Danny, who had died 3 years earlier, was buried there. David wanted his boys buried next to his brother, their uncle. But the way the cemetery was laid out, there was no room for the boys to be put next to Danny. So I found the cemetery custodian and asked him if it were possible to move Danny. And he said, "Well, yes, if that's what the family wants, we can move Danny." So I went back and told my brother. I said, "You know, David wants the boys to be next to their uncle. Would you have a problem if we moved Danny?" And he said no. So if you go out to the cemetery, you'll find that Danny and the boys are side by side.
Does anyone else wish to speak?
Yes, I'll go, please.
Yes, ma'am.
So as David's wife, I have stood by him for the last 30 years and watched his pain, his suffering, his dark days that you cannot imagine. It's been hard as a loving wife, to stand back and watch him suffer the pain that he has gone through. To not want to get out of bed some days. To not be able to get out of bed. Because the pain was so much for him. And for 30 years we had thought this day would never come. But yet here we are. I don't feel that it's time for her to be let out, because she took 2 lives. She didn't just take 1. She took 2 precious little boys that we haven't been able to watch grow up. And as Becky stated earlier, all the things that we've missed out on because of them not being here, all the things they missed out on growing up in and doing. And for her to be in prison for the last 30 years, you would think that she would have thought about what she's done. She would have said, I'm sorry. But she hasn't said, I'm sorry. She hasn't even called him. Hasn't even told him she was sorry. Much less the world. For 9 days, all I can think about is how much she lied and manipulated everybody. The whole world. I watched it and believed her myself. I wanted her to be telling the truth. But to be betrayed by her lies. And that just makes me feel like if she could do that then, whatever she's told you today, I'm sure were probably lies as well. Because she has shown in her last 30 years what she does in prison. She's all about herself. It's all about what she can do to make her life better. And Michael and Alice didn't get a chance at life. They were forced the death penalty. She took that from them. The lives of this family has been forever changed. It caused us to be a little overprotective of our now daughter. A little bit more than we probably should have been. Because we were afraid something might happen to her. It's changed the way we look at life. It's changed the way that we look at everybody. Who can I trust? For a long time, I didn't trust a lot of people. I had to be careful, around certain people. I didn't know if I could trust them or not. All because of her lies. So to help give this family some peace, it would be best if Susan stayed behind bars and stay in prison for the rest of her life. I respectfully ask you to keep her in. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Does anyone else wish to speak for Mr. Smith? Sheriff, anyone? Yes, ma'am.
Forgive me. Most of what I have to say is going to be pretty redundant. But primarily I would just like to focus on, since I came after the fact, what I had stolen from me was 2 older brothers, the good and the bad of having older siblings. And I now try to use my life as a way to live for them. And growing up,
I didn't quite understand it my whole life, but when I finally did, I felt like I had witnessed it, like I was there. The pain that not only was caused to me in like a domino effect, but what I have seen firsthand with my father, my aunt, and our whole hometown. We can no longer say that we're from Union County without Susan's actions being brought up. And just for the sake of all of us and our whole community, I ask that you deny her request.
Mr. Smith, you're welcome to stay seated if you are uncomfortable.
Madam Chairman, members of the committee. It's been a tough 30 years. I'm not here to speak about what she's done in prison. You all have the records and accounts of all that. Just here to advocate on Michael and Alex's behalf and as their father. You know, God gives us free choice. And she made free choice that night to end her life. This wasn't a tragic mistake. It wasn't something that she didn't mean to do. She purposely meant to end her life. I never have felt any remorse from her for it. She's never expressed any to me. I never seen it on paper. No, you've heard, she changed my life for the rest of my life that night. Some for the better, some for the worse, but what she did, not only to Michael and Alex, she came pretty close to causing me to end my life because of the grief that she brought upon me. But thankfully she didn't. I understand back in 95 that through the state's law, life in prison meant 30 years to life. And now that's different, but at that time that's what counts. I understand that. But ultimately to me, that's only 15 years per child. Her own children. It's just not enough. So I'm asking that you please deny her parole today. And hopefully in the future, but specifically today. Not let her out. I miss them very much. And I love them very much. And I will be here every 2 years going forward to ensure that their death doesn't go in vain. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Smith. Again, please know how very, very sorry this board is to all of you for all the pain that this crime caused you. But we sincerely appreciate you all being here with us today. Thank you very much. And thank you for the reminder with the picture of Alex and Michael. They were beautiful children. So thank you for reminding us of that today. We wish you the very best. And if no one else has anything else that they would like to say, if you all will exit with these ladies over here, we'll have an answer for you shortly. Thank you so much for being here. As a reminder, Mrs. Mira did recuse herself. Ms. Susan Smith is denied parole. The vote is unanimous. Numbers 1 and 6. Thank you.
Thank you. The time now is 12:51 p.m. We will pause our recording. Ms. Hunter, if you can advise when the recording has been paused.
The recording has been paused.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This is Valerie Suber, Associate Deputy Director for Paroles, Pardons, and Relief Services. If everyone would just give me a moment to give some instructions. As the room clears from the board, I would like for media to pay attention. You are given the next 15 minutes for bathroom break. Please use the restroom. Prepare yourselves for the press conference. We will allow you into the building beginning 15 minutes from now. Once we check you in, we'll start the press conference once everybody is inside. If there are any questions, please address them to the staff and we'll get you an answer as quickly as possible. Again, there is 15 minutes between the time we're ending this and beginning entrance back into the building. Anybody who is in the building who needs to leave and get their cameras or phones are allowed to do so during that 15-minute period and then check back in at the front door. Thank you all so much, and the board will be at recess for lunch.
Thank you.
The system's rigged, man, it's time to break free. Eyes wide open, gotta see what I see. Standing on the front lines, fighting for the truth. Lift the veil of lies, it's time to be the proof. Take a stand, don't you back down. Raise your voice, let's shake the town. We're the voices that won't be ignored. Breaking chains, yeah, we're ready for war. With the power. The system's rigged, man, it's time to break free. Eyes wide open, gotta see